Hey everybody, welcome to Moment of Clarity. This is a big one. I have Greg Palast here. You know him as the phenomenal investigative journalist and New York Times bestselling author. But before I bring him in, and by the way, take a second, please, to share this, let people know. Also, any donations that are made in the super chat will go to people who are struggling. For most of you will not be watching this live. If you're not watching this live, you can donate on Venmo at Lee Camp. All of those donations will also go to people who are struggling out there. But I want to start off by showing you a short 2-minute video that Greg Palast has just released on his investigation in Georgia. And you'll see the details in a moment. But I think it might be some of the worst names he's been called by an elected official, which is saying a lot because he's been called a lot of names by a lot of elected officials. So, can't get the Rockfin to go, but that's all right. We'll do the other channels anyway. So, all right, let's go to the video here, and then we'll bring in Greg Palast.
Marietta, Georgia.
We're about to meet with a GOP official who says that she has personal knowledge that 32,000 people are voting illegally in this county.
So my name is Pamela Reardon. I am currently 6th District Committee woman to the state party. I know for sure voters do not live here.
Altogether, Reardon and her cronies are challenging 364,000 citizens' right to vote.
This year, Georgia's GOP-controlled legislature passed a new law saying you can challenge an unlimited number of voters. Do you know this woman? You recognize that woman?
Not offhand. I don't.
You never spoke to her?
No.
What about this guy and his wife on his honeymoon? Do you recognize that man?
No.
So you didn't call him, but you challenged his right to vote or have his ballot challenged.
Sir, get out of my house.
Okay, I will get out of your house.
ACLU of Georgia attorney Rahul Garabadu.
The challenge statute didn't ever contemplate someone coming to town and challenging hundreds of thousands of voters at one time. This, in our view, was an abuse of that statute. That doesn't mean that you get to print out reams and reams of Excel spreadsheets and just, levy a charge against thousands of people that you don't even know and get them, removed off the rolls.
The 1871 Ku Klux Klan Act makes voter intimidation a crime.
Imagine using the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871.
Here is NAACP lawyer Gerald A. Griggs.
It gets real when you get arrested. It gets real.
You heard of the Ku Klux Klan law of 1871?
I'm from Canada.
So you don't know the Ku Klux Klan law?
I'm from Canada.
Clearly you don't know Georgia law. He's a legal voter.
I got my right to vote in '94. So I don't like people voting illegally. Get out of my house now.
I shall get out of your house now. And you are sure that this is your legal voting address?
You are.
Georgia, divided down the middle. And this civil war ain't over. This is Greg Palast in Georgia reporting.
So there you go, Greg's latest piece. Let's bring him on to talk about it. Here's Greg Palast.
Hey, let me turn up the lights a bit. Okay. There we go. All right. Yeah.
You look beautiful.
I couldn't even put on all of the statements that she had. Forget the beeps. I mean, she said, she called me an a-hole. She said, and now you have to understand, she's dressed like Nancy Reagan, very formal, in her 70s, Republican. And, she says, F you. And she's like screaming at my staff, you're all a-holes. So this is going on and on. And her husband. But here's what you didn't see in the film, Lee.
Yeah.
There was a reason why I skedaddled out of there quickly. Which is she had a shotgun right next to the door where I was saying, is this real? And she had between us on the table while I was interviewing her, she had all these handguns and the ammo boxes all stacked up. I'm not
So
kidding
let's,
you.
well, I'm glad you didn't get shot, but let's back up and maybe further explain what it was you were asking her about and how exactly this came to be. You've been fighting various voter purging efforts in Georgia for years now, but this is this is a new one, huh?
Yeah. So, I was with Rolling Stone and Salon and The Guardian investigating Georgia for 8 years, vote suppression, as they call it, which is basically screwing black people out of their votes. And that I've been doing for 20 years. So I've been following Georgia for 8 years because everyone just thought it was a red state, rednecks. And Martin Luther King III said to me, "Hey, Greg, if they let us vote, it's a blue state." So I investigated, and I, do a lot of undercover stuff, et cetera. How we got into her house, well, we'll discuss that another day. But
what is she running for?
now she is currently a Republican Party official, but she is Marjorie Taylor Greene's candidate for vice chair of the Republican State Party of Georgia. She probably will win that one. And so what happened was this woman personally challenged the right of 32,000 people to vote, including, you saw that black woman, Tamara Horn. She never called anyone. She never checked anything. I called Tamara. We called the Palast investigative team. We called 800 people. And she said they didn't live in Cobb County, which is a suburb of Georgia, so they can't vote there. They're all criminals. Big crime wave. She was joined. Her 32,000 challenges were joined by the chairman of the county party, the Republican chairman of the party, who added another 16,000 challenges. That's 48,000 votes. If they'd done these challenges before the presidential race, Agent Orange would still be president. He would have, we'd have lost Georgia.
Right.
So they're challenging, and this is a big point, Lee.
Yeah.
They're using something weird that many states have, an old Jim Crow law that says that any voter, they call him an elector, any voter can challenge any other voter. So it was a white guy saying, "Don't let Joe Black vote. He shouldn't be voting." But now, instead of the kind of white sheet patrol, it's become spreadsheets. They're sending in spreadsheets with all together in Georgia. These operatives of a Texas organization, almost all of them GOP officials, challenge 364,000 voters. 364,000 voters. That's a third of a million voters.
What's the next step in the process? Once they're challenged, what happens then?
Oh, well, that's why you saw that that our lawyer from the ACLU on this. Well, two things. The first, from the NAACP guy, the next step is to handcuff them and throw them in the can, throw them in prison under the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871. It's a crime. You can't just massively challenge people of color and say that's a form of intimidation. Now, what they have to do, okay, you're challenged. Now the county's supposed to send you a postcard saying you have to come in for a hearing to prove you are who you are. Now, most people get these cards, they think it's junk mail, they throw them away. What, I got to go in? I have to say who I am? Yeah. And the ACLU also noted that, in Georgia, there's not a lot of vaccinated people. And so you would be sending literally tens of thousands of people into a little county office during a pandemic. And it's insane. People would have to take a day off work, and then they'd have to get in line with a couple thousand other people.
Right.
So at first, the counties have resisted it, but under the new law passed by the Georgia legislature, because the county said, we can't do this. First, they mounted the challenge in December before the Senate runoffs, by the way. But the ACLU and Stacey Abrams' organization all said, no, you can't remove people within 90 days of an election. What the ACLU and NAACP didn't know is that after the 90 days expire, these people are back with their challenges. So you have to go in and say, I'm Lee Camp, and say, how do you know? And here's where I live. Well, how can you prove that? So you get
Right.
But if you can do that, you get your vote back. Thanks a lot.
And that type of procedure benefits the middle class, upper class people that have time on their hands to go deal with something like that. Have own cars, etc.
Well, remember, not everyone gets challenged.
Right.
They picked a third of a million out of 5 million voters, and a suspicious amount of people like Tamara Horn, who is an African-American woman. She lost, by the way, her job during COVID, had to sell her home, moved down the street with her relatives into a relative's house. And they challenged her vote because they said she moved. Well, if you move within your county in Georgia, you don't lose your vote. So you have a lot of low-income people who are shifting around, especially during COVID. This is always true. And the other group they're going after with this is students, Black people, Asian Americans are a big target too. And as we speak, just about an hour ago, the U.S. Justice Department sued over this new law that was passed. But even the Justice Department does not know about these new challenges. That's brand new. So we'll be talking to the Justice Department to get their reaction of what we've just uncovered. Because this is all done stealth.
Speaking of that, the Justice Department doesn't seem to know. Why is it? I've been interviewing you for over a decade now. Why does it seem like you're the only one fighting this? Having these people not purged from the rolls would help the Democratic Party, writ large. And so why is it you can't even get like most Democrats to be talking about this? It's kind of crazy.
It may be crazy. Well, yeah, first of all, let's remember. We did have one Democrat, Stacey Abrams, who cited my investigations back in 2018 to say, I won. I won't be inaugurated because the election was stolen. And she cited the Greg Palast investigations that proved that a third of a million people, again, there were illegally thrown off the rolls, including Martin Luther King's 92-year-old cousin, famously, who we were there when she had her 92-year-old butt tossed out of the polls. They said she couldn't vote anymore. It was going to be her 50th year of voting. And so, so we have one person, but you may not know this, but Stacey Abrams is Black. But it's not that Democrats don't know about stolen votes. It's the white congressional caucus, the Democratic side of the white congressional caucus, which has a tough time. They're beginning to take on the issue, but remember, their line is American elections are perfect. And if you say otherwise, we're going to take you off the internet. So it's a contradiction.
Right.
We can't say American elections are perfect. And then at the same time say, well, look what's happening in Georgia. They aren't perfect. They steal Georgia. Now, they didn't steal enough votes this past time because
they got close.
The challenge failed. Yes, and they tried the challenge again before the election.
What happened? What wasn't in that video is you asked her if she knew the people. She said no, and these are people she has personally challenged their right to vote. And so, what did she? You must have then said, well, you challenged their right to vote. Why'd you do that if you don't know them? And what was her response?
Get out of, well, you're all a-holes. Get out of my house. I did even better. What you don't see in the film, because it was only 2 minutes, is I actually had one of the voters that she challenged on the phone, on the speakerphone. I said, would you like to talk to Mr. Saul, whose vote you blocked? He's on the phone right now. You want to? Have you ever talked to him before? No? Well, here he is. I'm sure you want to talk to him since you don't want him to vote. Explain why you've taken away this gentleman's right as an American citizen. In fact, you've accused him of a felony crime because voting illegally is 5 years in the slammer. So she's accused tens of thousands of people. Now, remember, she's one of 88 GOP shills. But yes, so we had her. So we had the voter on the phone. We showed the photos. I was able to contact people. I went to their homes, by the way, to make sure that they were, in fact, legit voters. I don't trust anyone, as you know, Lee. But I've been doing this a long time. Yeah, it's very hard to get any party to really take on this issue. Finally, there's a bit of recognition because they're pushed by Stacey Abrams, the ACLU, and a lot of our publicity from our work. And, so now, for the first time, Biden found out, and the Democrats are beginning to say, if we actually protect voters, we might win some states. But there's always, remember, the fear of the Democratic Party of being seen as a black party, a racial issue. That Obama never took on the issue.
Well, also the Democratic Party has the spine of an arthritic jellyfish, so it's
that's why they don't. That's why people always ask me why they don't stand up. But it's the same reason jellyfish don't. But it's so it's I mean we're laughing, but it's actually you got to laugh because it's beyond insane. We are going to take this information to the Justice Department and see what their reaction is. I mean, are they serious about this stuff or not? So what happened in the new law? They took this old Jim Crow law because a lot of counties, even Republican counties, said we're not going to remove tens of thousands of people because some lady in a red dress says they shouldn't vote. And remember, it's 88 counties that this was happening. And so now the new law says if you don't take these people off, if you don't accept the challenges under the new law, we can remove you from the elections board. And in fact, Helen Butler, who is head of a voting rights organization, she was my co-plaintiff in a successful lawsuit against Brian Kemp, the governor. And we won a federal lawsuit. And the result was, because she's on the Monroe County Elections Board, the only Democrat, they yanked her off the elections board. That's what they can do now under the new law. They simply just said, you're out, replacing her with another Republican. So it's now 100% Republican board. And any board, even Republicans, and they're going after Republicans who won't accept these bogus challenges, they get removed by a brand new state board controlled by the governor, who's a right-wing fruitcake Republican, and the two legislative leaders who are even more right-wing, more fruitcake, and more Republican. And that's who's in charge of voting now in Georgia. Good luck. So, look, thank you for letting me expose this, and maybe the American media will allow it in too.
Yeah, right? Yeah. What
and you wouldn't have to broadcast from your submarines in an undisclosed location in the Atlantic.
This bill that they're trying to get through Congress that doesn't look like they're having much luck right now, having to do with voting. Do you have any hope for that? Is it? I haven't gotten into the details of the bill. Does it seem?
Well, I'd say that the chance of its passing are roughly dead zero. Because they're not going to pass any legislation which is going to protect the voters. And there are two bills, including the John Lewis Act, the second, which I think is more important, which says, look, we have to restore the Voting Rights Act. But the one thing is, I will say, it's still there. The Voting Rights Act may have bullet holes in it, may be bleeding on the steps of the Supreme Court. But there is Section 2, and as we speak, it's been about an hour ago, the Justice Department did file under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, whether they're going to take this on or not, because this is brand new. We just literally, as you're broadcasting this week, we just busted this open. Everyone, like I say, ACLU, everyone was shocked that they were using this gambit. It's an outside group. Remember, it's not the government even. It's outside group. Now it's in cahoots with the government, which should make it a crime, not only under the Ku Klux Klan Act, but the Civil Rights Act, conspiracy of government and a private group, because the Secretary of State, a vicious right-wing vote-munching Republican named Brad Raffensperger, who is otherwise known as a hero on MSNBC, the Republican Secretary of State, has actually invited in the organization that came up with this bogus list, True the Vote, to come in and challenge voters. What he said was, I can't do this under federal law, just start removing voters like Tamara Horn, but private parties can, and then we as the state will accept your list. In other words, it's a little game. He's literally inviting them to come in to break federal law in cahoots with the state. Now, that's what we still have laws on the books against it. Believe it or not, it's actually illegal to go out of your way to stop hundreds of thousands of black people from voting. It's still kind of against the law in the United States. But I know Georgia,
barely.
Then there's that legal question Supreme Court's going to have to take on. Is Georgia part of the United States, and do our laws apply there?
Yeah, there's so many steps that have to be taken to actually give us a legit democracy at any point, such as getting off these crap computerized voting machines that no other country is dumb enough to use like we are. But yeah, thank you for all your work. What are you working on next?
I'm going back into Georgia. Well, here's the problem. I'm going after the billionaires behind this because, okay, this is a Texas group which gave these bogus spreadsheets to Georgia Republicans. But behind this group called True the Vote out of Houston are billionaires, the Bradley family of Wisconsin. They're the new Kochs. They spent $2 billion now on ultra right-wing causes. And they're not going to be done with Georgia. They're going to go to Texas, Wisconsin, North Carolina, Georgia. This is going to spread. And just like the Ku Klux Klan, just suddenly metastasized with the white sheets, this spreadsheet game is going, if they win in Georgia, it's going to go everywhere.
Instead of white sheets, now it's spreadsheets. I like that. I like
Why would you like that?
that.
Okay, yes, but that's exactly what's happening, Lee, and that's where I'm going next. I'm going after the Billionaires, the group in Texas, and of course, more of these in Georgia. It's serious stuff because next year is the re-election of the Reverend Senator Warnock. Stacey Abrams probably going to run for governor against Brian Kemp. And it's not that I'm partisan. It's just that, hey, why don't we just let the voters choose the governors and the senators?
No,
Why not?
That's unacceptable. That's unacceptable.
Not in Georgia.
But you can remain excited that you've outlasted David Koch. You've essentially outlasted Chris Kobach. So I think you're winning.
He said, no, I'm sorry. Chris Kobach of Kansas, just if you don't remember his name, just think KKK. Chris Kobach of Kansas is running for attorney general there now. You know, he may have been buried, but someone forgot to put the golden stake through the heart. So he's back up out of the crypt and back up with his, trying to suppress the vote, not only in Kansas, but nationwide. And so we're not done. We'll be back with more. I haven't hung up my hat yet.
Well, keep pissing off the oligarchy, Greg. I get thrown out of more houses.
Yeah, but hopefully, but next time I'll wear the bulletproof vest. Thanks.
What's the website? GregPalast.com?
GregPalast.com, GregPalast.com. You can watch the video, spread it around, and we'll read the follow-up reports.
Thank you, Greg.
You're welcome.
All right, that's Greg Palast, always doing great work on trying to have people's votes count because, it's not that you'll ever stop them from stealing votes. We will never, in my lifetime, have a full-on legit democracy or democratic republic, but you can swamp what's stolen. You can defeat what's stolen by having so many people voting that it ends up being closer, at least closer to what the people actually want. And furthermore, especially on local issues, which are often not talked about, you can have a massive impact by, those local issues are often, and local politicians are often, there's less fraud going on. There's less purging of voters. You can have more impact because it's fewer people you have to actually convince to show up to the polls. So there's a lot of things going on here where voting does still matter, even if it is so, aggressively tampered with, as Greg was talking about at kind of the larger level, the statewide level, the national level. But there's still something there. There's still something to fight for. And Greg Palast seems to be one of the few that actually does that kind of investigative work. So many people, the mainstream media doesn't want to cover it because they want to tell you lies about how our election system is perfect. They also don't want to cover it because they don't want to have to fly to Georgia and go to people's houses. Too much work for them. They want to sit back and just give you the State Department talking points that were printed out of whatever fucking printing machine in their office, and then they don't have to go anywhere. So let's see here. I thought I'd give you another story before we wrapped up. And again, I'm sorry, I don't know what happened to Rockfin. It does not seem to be working today. Don't know if that's their fault or something else, but or StreamYard's fault or something. I don't know. I don't know whose fault it is. But thought I'd give you another story. The U.S. has done its best to continue to fuck over Cuba. Hold on. There it is. This is from Common Dreams. Common Dreams is a good outlet, by the way. U.S. and Israel vote no as 184 nations condemn American blockade of Cuba. 184 fucking nations condemn this blockade. 184. 184 condemn this blockade, and yet the U.S. and Israel vote no on condemning the blockade because it is a U.S. blockade, right? It's a U.S. created blockade. The UN vote on Cuba was a chance for President Biden to show global leadership, said Code Pink co-founder Medea Benjamin. He failed miserably, as he tends to do when it comes to global leadership. But yeah, this blockade on Cuba has been going on for a long time, years, right? Generations of sanctions against Cuba, blockades of Cuba. And, you know, America's doing their best. The American government is doing its best to destroy lives in Cuba, all because we're still butthurt over the fact that they threw off our capitalist chains and decided to do their own thing, which whether you love, you know, there's definite talk of, you know, repression, media repression, things like that in Cuba. But that doesn't mean that we should be able to destroy their lives. And besides the fact that there's more open discussion, more open debate in Cuba than the United States. If you look at who owns our airwaves, 90% of all our corporate airwaves, you know, mainstream media airwaves are owned by tiny number of corporations, 4 or 5, and they're all giving U.S. talking points. But what we're really mad about is that they decided to have their own lives and do their own thing. And we're still furious about that. And we're still treating them like shit, trying to ruin their lives, trying to make sure they, you know, don't have medical equipment or don't have certain foods or can't get, you know, oil or whatever. And it's fucking ridiculous. Cuba's a wonderful country. I got lucky. I got to go on a Code Pink trip. That was who wrote that article that I just referenced. Medea Benjamin, co-founder of Code Pink. And Code Pink had some ability to get to take trips down to Cuba. So I got to go down there. It's a fucking gorgeous country, wonderful people, friendly people. And here's the other thing is, well, if you ask your average American about Cuba, they think there's some sort of dastardly shit going on there because they believe all of our lies and all of our propaganda from American outlets. And so while your average American is like, oh, ew, Cuba, oh, God, they're communists or something. They're trying to get us. And your average American acts like that. But your average Cuban, if you say, I'm American or I'm from the United States, they don't give a shit. They're like, oh, great. Yeah, great. I love the United States. My cousin lives there. Like, they haven't been fed the propaganda that every American that shows up, it must be some sort of evil villain. Whereas you do have that kind of garbage given to people in the United States, that kind of propaganda. And so it's just pathetic. I mean, that so many people believe it. I mean, think about it. Who should tell you where you get your fucking cigars? Oh, you can't. Cuban cigars are illegal. Why? It's dumb. Do you realize how dumb that shit is? Oh, you can't have the cigars across the border. What the fuck's the border? I can't walk across the border with a cigar? We don't have freedom. You're kidding yourself if you think we're free. All these goddamn rules. You can't bring in someone else's cigars because it's not patriotic. They're not patriotic cigars. They're not, you know, they don't fucking sing the Star Spangled Banner that doesn't play when you light them. It's such nonsense. And yet people act like we're free in this country. Can't even get a cigar and we're free. Oh, look how free we are. Can't get Cuban rum in this country, but we're free. We're free. Fucking, it's not free at all. Read a little more from this article. For the 29th straight year, the members of the General Assembly voted overwhelmingly in favor of a resolution demanding an end to the 60-year U.S. economic blockade on Cuba. This year, 184 nations voted in favor of the resolution, while the U.S. and Israel voted against it. 3 nations, Brazil, Colombia, and Ukraine, abstained. And whose pocket are Brazil, Colombia, and Ukraine in, do you think? The ones that abstained. Critics this year noted the detrimental effects of the embargo on Cuba's ability to combat the COVID-19 pandemic. Medea Benjamin tweeted, the UN vote regarding the U.S. blockade on Cuba was a chance for President, I already said that, chance for President Biden to show global leadership. He failed miserably. Whoever thought Biden was going to show global leadership? But he barely knows where he is. He's going to be the leader of the world. Right. That's really what we need is this guy who, you know, needs a crew of people to empty his chamber pots is gonna lead us around the world, around the globe. The Cuban foreign minister, Rodriguez Padilla, slammed the blockade as a massive, flagrant, and unacceptable violation of the human rights of the Cuban people and an economic war of extraterritorial scope against a small country already affected in the recent period by the economic crisis derived from the pandemic. And what this does is it makes the United States a rogue state, right? It makes us the rogue state, the state that has fucking gone haywire, the one that's fucking twirled off to the edge. It reminds me of the brain fungus. You ever watch one of those documentaries? This type of fungus that gets in insects' brains like ants, and it slowly takes over their brain, and the ant starts walking all kind of crazy. And then the other ants realize, oh, fuck, that guy's fucked up. And he starts wandering. And while they're all in their like steady ant lines, he's like wandering over here. And then they take him farther away because they're like, oh, shit, something's wrong with him. And he's going to infect all of us. And so they put him out to pasture. They put him out. They're like, let's take crazy Steve over here where he can't hurt anyone. And they leave him away from the other ants. And then towards the end of the fungus takeover of the ant's brain, it blossoms out of his head into these like gorgeous like fungal flower things. And it truly is the most horrifying and yet gorgeous thing to watch this thing fucking come out of the thing's head and just be this beautiful blossom out of its brain. But the other ants realize like, oh, crazy Steve is being crazy. And he's like twirling around and he's walking all weird and he's going to infect others. And so they take him away. There are other world nations are clearly thinking about that with the United States at this point. When we're the only ones, us and Israel, are the only fucking crazy Steves that think that this Cuba blockade makes any sense whatsoever. We are now the rogue state, right? We spend fucking 10 times more on military than any other country. The largest prison state by far than any other country. We are the largest environmental destroyer of any other country. We are the rogue state. We are the crazy Steve, and we're infecting other countries and harming them. And it's time they should probably put us out to pasture. They should probably, I don't know if you can do that with a country, but take us somewhere far out in the field and leave us there so we can't hurt anyone else. Might be the best plan of what to do next. All right, I got one more story for you before I'll wrap up here. And by the way, there's another new government secrets today. Me and Graham Elwood. We do it on Graham's YouTube channel. That's at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. New government secrets live stream. And of course, it's also a podcast. But if you want to watch the live stream, that's at Graham Elwood's YouTube channel. So set your clock for 6 p.m. Eastern. Also, I'm doing a live stream this weekend, Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern with Eleanor Goldfield. We're bringing back that live stream. It's been a couple of weeks off, and so we're excited to do it again. So write it down in your calendars, 8 p.m. Eastern, youtube.com/moment of clarity. Me and Eleanor will be back. But one more story before we wrap up here. And by the way, if anyone donated, all those donations go to people who are struggling, and we talk more about that on the weekend live streams. If you are struggling in these very trying times, you can email commoncensored@protonmail.com. We try to get to as many as we can. We can't get to everyone, unfortunately. There's not enough money for that, but we're doing our best to get to as many as possible. And the donation amount is roughly $80. It's not thousands. We can't. So if you've got like a harpoon through your chest right now, and you're like, who do I email to get the money to pay someone to take this out? That's probably a poor choice because I don't think we can get the harpoon out of your chest right now. That probably costs a little more. So yeah, not those kind of emergencies. Okay, one more story here about how much the Intercept is continuing to suck. Well, and you guys have heard me say this before. While the Intercept does occasionally, I'm moving this light. It's fucking burning my retinas off. Sorry, you'll just have to deal with a few more shadows. Pretend it's a ghost story. I'm going to tell you a ghost story about a media outlet called The Intercept. So The Intercept does have some good stories. Every once in a while, I'll even quote from one of their stories on Redacted tonight. They do some good work here and there. But the problem is they're owned by a billionaire who has his own interests, and they've been censoring things. They censored Glenn Greenwald, who was the co-founder, and he finally quit because they were censoring him, because they wouldn't let him write about, negative stories about Biden before the election, even though it was true. Everything he was reporting was true, but they just wanted to help Joe Biden, I guess. And so anyway, here is some of the latest about the Intercept as it continues to fall apart. This is on Mint Press News. Omidyar is the name. Pierre Omidyar is the name of the billionaire that created and funds the Intercept. Omidyar's Intercept teams up with war propaganda firm Bellingcat. Despite promoting itself as an independent and open source investigation site, Bellingcat has received a significant portion of its funding from Google, which is also one of the most powerful U.S. military contractors and whose rise to prominence was directly aided by the CIA. I'll just read from. I was going to tell you more about Bellingcat, but I'll just read some of her stuff. The Intercept, along with its parent company, First Look Media, recently hosted a workshop for pro-war, Google-funded organization Bellingcat in New York. The workshop, which cost $2,500 per person to attend and lasted 5 days, aimed to instruct participants in how to perform investigations using open source tools with Bellingcat's past controversial investigations for use as case studies. The exact details of what occurred during the workshop have not been made public, and Bellingcat founder Elliot Higgins declined to elaborate on the workshop when pressed on social media. So you got to understand, Bellingcat is kind of hilarious because it's a way for the CIA or the U.S. state to pretend that information is not coming from them. So the term for that is a cutout, right? So when people say a CIA cutout, they mean an organization that is basically been created by the CIA, but now has been separated from the CIA so that it can appear that the CIA is not doing these things. So a good example is the National Endowment for Democracy, NED, or USAID as well. But like NED will fund all these other organizations. And when people point to that and say, oh, they're funded by NED, that sounds to your average person, okay, National Endowment for Democracy. I don't know what that is. Okay, they're founded by NED. But NED is a CIA cutout. It, is basically doing, and they've actually said that, in a rare, honest moment, one of the former people on the board or founders or something said that NED does what the CIA used to do and now has, outsourced to the NED. But NED is a CIA cutout. It is doing what the CIA does, but now by basically, I call it brand laundering or brand washing. You've heard of money laundering, which is you change where the money came from, or you filter the money through another location so that people don't know where the money came from. Well, this is laundering of a brand. So rather than knowing that the CIA funded something, which would sound suspicious, it's NED funded. And people go, oh, that sounds fine, NED funded. So you've laundered the reputation or the brand of who's funding this organization. So in the case of Bellingcat, it's like media laundering, the brand of the media. You are taking something that is funded by, NATO, funded by Google, and it is doing what the U.S. State Department would do. Like its State Department talking points is what Bellingcat reveals, quote unquote. But they do it as an independent, open source, journalistic outfit. So now CNN, and I've covered this before, where CNN will do a segment and they'll say, as independent investigation outlet, Bellingcat revealed, blah, blah, blah. And your average viewer will go, oh, some investigation outlet, who knows? Now, if CNN had said, as the CIA revealed, then people might at least be like, oh, well, it's the CIA telling us. That's a little different. So it is a way of laundering, reputation, laundering brand. To go back to this article, the decision on the part of the Intercept is particularly troubling. She's talking about to partake in this joint event with Bellingcat. Is particularly troubling given the publication has long been associated with the track records of its founding members, such as Jeremy Scahill and Glenn Greenwald, who have long been promoted as an important progressive and anti-war voices in the U.S. media landscape. Greenwald publicly distanced himself, blah, blah, blah. I already told you that. Bellingcat's open support for foreign military intervention and tendency to promote NATO-U.S. war propaganda are unsurprising when one considers how the group is funded and the groups with which it regularly collaborates. For instance, Bellingcat regularly works with the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, which, according to late journalist Robert Perry, engages in investigative journalism that usually goes after governments that have fallen in a disfavor with the United States and then are singled out for accusations of corruption. In addition, Bellingcat's founder, Elliot Higgins, is employed by the Atlantic Council, which I've talked about them before. I'll actually be talking about them on an upcoming Redacted tonight as well. The Atlantic Council is a NATO-run, people call it the brains of NATO, actually, the Atlantic Council. That's how people, view it, is it's kind of the brains of NATO. The board of the Atlantic Council is every horror show you could imagine. It's Henry Kissinger, Colin Powell, Condoleezza Rice, generals, Petraeus, Mad Dog Mattis, Wesley Clark, Scowcroft, 7 former directors of the CIA. That's who the board is of the Atlantic Council. And so the Atlantic Council runs around doing all this horrible shit. But meanwhile, most people still don't know the name, the Atlantic Council. So when they hear that Facebook partnered with the Atlantic Council, everybody goes, I don't know what that is. All right, it sounds fine. But in fact, it's this who's who of fucking megalomaniacal, dungeon-dwelling shitheads. Every one of them has gotten drunk off virgin blood out of a skull in a basement somewhere. But anyway. So Bellingcat's funding is more telling than its professional associations. Indeed, despite promoting itself as an independent and open source investigation site, Bellingcat has received a significant portion of its funding from Google, which is also one of the most powerful U.S. military contractors and whose rise to prominence was directly aided by the CIA. Google has also been actively promoting regime change in countries like Syria, a policy Bellingcat also promotes. As one example, leaked emails from Jared Cohen, former director of Google Ideas, and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton revealed that Google developed software aimed at assisting Al-Qaeda and other Syrian opposition groups in boosting their ranks. Furthermore, Cohen was once described by Stratfor intelligence analysts as a loose cannon for his deep involvement in Middle East regime change efforts. Under Donald Trump, Google's connections to the U.S. government have become even more powerful, as the current Trump-appointed director of national intelligence once worked as a corporate lobbyist for Google. So there's a lot of things you're learning if you didn't know them, but most people knew some of this. Google, one of the largest, military contractors we have. They're not making weapons, but they're making the software, the internet applications, etc., that allow for our endless war. So they are part and parcel with our war machine nowadays. So that's Google, which is funding Bellingcat, which are putting out so-called journalistic exposés that are designed and are full of falsehoods and designed to further the U.S. empire. So all of that is one thing. Hearing a news story about how terrible Bellingcat is, okay. But the fact that the Intercept is partnering with Bellingcat for events where it's $2,500 a person, that's very troubling. because that either means that the Intercept is so fucking dumb they have no idea who Bellingcat is, which is not true. It's very clear Intercept knows who and what Bellingcat is. Or it means they're fine with it. They're fine with who and what Bellingcat is, which seems to be obvious, seems to be clearly what is happening here. And that makes you question the motivations of the Intercept. Why would they partner with Bellingcat if they're supposedly adversarial to the U.S. government? Meaning adversarial, meaning willing to reveal the actual news stories about our U.S. government. So, and yeah, Steve just mentioned Google's old motto when they first started was "Don't be evil," and they literally years later decided to remove that. Like literally, there was like a higher ups at Google decision to put to end their motto, "Don't be evil," because apparently they were like, we'd like to get up to some evil. And honestly, we've already been doing some evil, and the motto makes us feel very awkward about it. So if we could just get rid of that motto, that would be great. Thank you, Nicole, for the donations. All donations on the Super Chat and on Venmo at Lee Camp will go to people who are struggling, those who need help right now. But yeah, so that's some news about the Intercept, some news about Bellingcat, some news about Google. Hope you learned a little something there. Hope you learned a little something by Greg Palast, from Greg Palast as well. Feel free, want to learn more about that, feel free to check out his website. I will be doing a live stream this Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern with Eleanor Goldfield. Please join us there. It's youtube.com/moment of clarity. By the way, I did try and put this video on Rockfin. Something's gone wrong with Rockfin right now, so it's not up there as of yet, but maybe later. And yeah, thanks for joining me, everybody. And if you want to become a member of and actually support this or podcast Common Censored, go to liberapay.com/LeeCamp, LIBERAPAY.com/LeeCamp. Thanks, everybody. Keep fighting.